Qualitative research does not produce general laws, but focuses on how an individual perceives experiences. This leads to new ways of conducting research from internal and subjective reality, based on beliefs, experiences, and presuppositions, where truth is built by the researcher. Narrative analysis conceives text as a research method and not just as a way of presenting results. It is an interdisciplinary study where human and social sciences converge. Narrative analysis' aim is understanding and making sense of experience. Storytelling is a manner in which a person presents his perception of the world and his experience in a meaningful way. That's why the narrative is the phenomenon that is studied in this type of research. As a method, the researcher collects data about life stories and experiences of certain people to describe and analyze them. So narrative analysis is both the phenomenon being investigated and the research method. So we must distinguish between the story, the phenomenon, and the narrative research.
The interest in narrative and narrative analysis can be traced back to the interpretation of the Bible. In 1986, the interdisciplinary group called the Personal Narrative Group was founded, and in the 90s, there were academic publications that approach human life from a narrative perspective. Today, with our current understanding of the world, narrative research allows us to explore personal and social identities, subjective emotions, as well as the relationships between these items. The narrative provides a structure of our sense of self and identity. On the other hand, it allows us to acquire the reasons that explain to the phenomena through people's perception of the world. First-person accounts of experience constitute the narrative text of this research approach, whether the account is in the form of the autobiography, life history, interview, journal, letter, or other material that are collected. The text is analyzed to understand the meaning it has for its author. Hermeneutics provides a theoretical framework for interpretative understanding or meaning with special attention of the original context and purpose to make sense and interpret a text. It was important to know what the author wanted to communicate, to understand the intended meaning, and to place the documents in a historical and cultural context. The philosophy or hermeneutics focuses on the interpretation of this narrative text, with an emphasis on interpretation and context. As with other form of qualitative research, narrative research makes use of various methodological approaches to analyzing stories. Each approach examines in some way how the story is constructed, what linguistic tools are used, and the cultural context of the story. Biographical, psychological, and linguistic approaches are the most common.
Narrative analysis is often used when the goal is to evaluate the sequence of events. It can be in the form of autobiography, life history, diary, letters, etc. Narrative studies are divided into topics: biographical, autobiographical, has a variety of sources of narrative data and diversity of instruments and strategies for collecting such data. Field notes, journals, transcripts of interviews, observations, studies, letters, autobiographical and biographical writings, testimonies, and other documents such as class schedules or bulletins, norms and regulations, press articles, pictures, radio and television recordings, class plans or projects, etc. Actions of a narrative study. 1. Approach to understand and represent experiences through life stories. 2. Choose participants with life stories and experiences of interest. 3. Immersion in the field for contextualization. 4. Collect data on life stories and their contexts. 5. Explore the meaning of narrated and documented experiences. 6. The researchers recount the story. 7. Analyze storytelling. Identify categories and topics. Set event timeline. Validate data. 8. Elaborate the study report. Particular and general narrative, descriptions, themes, explanation, hypotheses, and theories. 9. Review the report with participants and other researchers. 10. Elaborate the final version of the report.
Considerations for the process. In these designs, in addition to the theoretical framework, a perspective is used that provides a structure to understand the individual or group, and writing narrative contextualizes the time and place where the person or group lived, or where events occur or experiences. Oral texts and narratives also provide data to be analyzed by the researcher and re-narrated in the research report. The researcher analyzes several issues: the life history, passage or events, in itself, the environment, time and place, in which the person or group lived or the events happened, the interactions, the sequence of events and the results. In this process, the researcher reconstructs the history of the individual or the chain of events, almost always chronologically, from the first facts to the later. Then narrate it in its optics and describes, based on available evidence, and identifies emerging categories and themes in narrative data, which come from the stories told by participants, documents, materials, and the researcher's own narration. Narrative research is increasingly used in studies on educational experience, focusing mainly on describing, analyzing, and theorizing organizational processes and practices, curriculum and teacher training. For its multifunctionality and interdisciplinary, narrative analysis can be applied in education in the curriculum, educational centers, teachers, and in history education. History of education can also be made through autobiographies, using memories, testimonies, memories, self-portraits, diaries of teachers and students, and other documents that reflect historical moments.